Sure. The focus of my first few questions is about the different ethnic and faith-based groups in Syria, such as Alawites, Druze, Kurds, and Christians. Um, we can appreciate coordinated assaults involving state forces with affiliated ISIS extremist groups against civilians with gravity of scales of crimes, including killing and raping, capturing women and children in public squares, homes, hospitals, and schools. There's been hundreds identified as dead, with thousands that have been injured or captured, and villages have been burned. My first question is, what exactly is the position of the Canadian government, and why was the government silent on this?
I'm not sure I totally understand the question. In terms of the position of the government, any killings of civilians, atrocities, human rights abuses is unacceptable. And to my knowledge, we were not silent on it. I believe that the minister and the ministers have put out statements and other things on this, and also certainly in my own engagements, it's something that comes up regularly.
Thank you. So further, what was the basis of the government's decision then to lift sanctions on a regime that is failing to protect its own people and that have taken a part of the attacks against civilians?
Well, if I go back to my response to the question on sanctions, I think there was the evaluation. So it's certainly not been a perfect transition. I don't think anybody would characterize it as such. And any death of civilians, any massacre is unacceptable, and the government needs to hold those persons to account. What I would say is that there has been definitely improvements from where we were in March to now. I mean, coming out of March 2026 is likely to be the least violent month in 15 years in Syria. I think the total number killed is 12, 4 from UXOs, 4 from ISIS, and then 4 from other events. Now, those 4 are unacceptable, right? So the government needs to do more to lower and to put in place structures and systems so that violence, certainly communal violence, can happen. But I think that the decision to remove sanctions is about trying to find a way to support that transition and to build a government that is more stable and inclusive.
So is it safe to suggest that the government is supportive of the regime's 5-year transitional constitutional framework?
I don't think we would take a position on the timelines or the process itself. I think what we want to do is ensure that whatever the Syrian-led process is, that it takes into consideration some of the concerns that we have, and that we take this time to advance our objectives and our concerns around human rights protections, minority inclusion, the participation of women. If at the end of the day, the government decides that in 3 years it's ready to move forward and there's legislative support and there's broad community support, and that results in a process that has been more free and transparent, that's had the full participation of minority communities and women, and there's broad-based support, I think we would look at that and say that's been a positive one. If, on the other hand, after 5 or 6 years that hasn't happened, we would say, okay, this probably hasn't been an effective process. But I wouldn't say that the time itself is the consideration. It's really how the Syrians use this time to build a better constitution and a more stable architecture for the country's future.
Okay, so that suggests to me that the department will probably do an assessment as to the feasibility of the framework itself. Moving on, has the government done any assessments into the elections held in October of last year?
The elections. So I would say that we've definitely looked at how the process was undertaken, and we've looked at the results of that process. What I'd say is that it wouldn't meet, I think, it certainly wasn't a democratic, it wasn't a broad-based democratic process where every Syrian had a vote. It was much more of I don't know what the correct terminology was, but it's more of it was a representative selective it's a representative process through selective bodies. Now that, it's hard to tell what the future of that will look like. Will that be emulated in a constitutional process? Is that what the Syrians envision for the future? Or does the Syrian government envision something more of a broad-based election where all Syrians would have a way to participate? But we haven't been able to go into the exact details of how committees were selected. It wasn't a open and transparent democratic process in that sense.